Hello everyone. Welcome back to Dewey's YouTube channel for ghost stories. I hope you enjoyed today's spooky tale. Before diving into the ghost story, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel to support Dewey. Thank you all so much for your comments on episode 155. Today, Dewey would like to express gratitude to those who commented early and those whose comments were most liked, such as XA Quanti, Yin Hong Pham, Tuan Huyen, Hong Nguyen, and Loc Van. Additionally, thanks to those who commented shortly after the video was uploaded, like Min Hien, Ho Ti Nak, Nguyen Sang, and Lanok Bitch. Your support is a great motivation for Dewey to continue sharing captivating stories. Today's story is about karma and the mysterious connection between a tomboy girl and the spiritual world. She has witnessed these events since she was young and is now about to turn 18. She often senses spiritual occurrences around her, but isn't sure if she has a strong or weak spiritual aura. Sometimes she feels the presence of spirits nearby, although she has never seen them. There have been instances where she was pushed or helped by unseen forces. The story begins with an incident in her grandmother's family in SOC Trang. When she was young, her grandmother bought a large piece of land, but, being a Catholic, did not believe in ghosts and did not perform any rituals before building a house. Her grandparents had 11 children, all normal except for her youngest uncle, who was affected by Agent Orange and was unable to walk, crawling on his knees. Everything was normal until her uncle turned 22. Her third uncle had an accident at a construction site and was taken to Cho Ray Hospital in Saigon. The doctors found his leg was broken but not life-threatening. Her parents had divorced, so she rarely contacted her paternal family. She secretly called her father in Tay Ninh to visit her uncle. Her father, who was an alcoholic, went to the hospital but ended up drinking with another uncle instead of caring for her third uncle. They drank until morning, only to find out her uncle had jumped from the balcony during a delirium episode, breaking both legs and becoming paralyzed. Her grandmother's family, already having one disabled member, now had two. All 7 sons in the family were alcoholics, known for petty theft, which led to their isolation from neighbors. Despite knowing her family's history, she believes in karma and that wrongdoing will eventually be repaid. So now, your paternal family has to slowly pay the price. After your uncle became paralyzed, he was brought back to live in the old house of your parents when they were still together. Strange things started happening when he returned. You weren't sure if it was due to his excessive drinking or if he was possessed, but he exhibited very odd behaviors. Sometimes he lay still like a child. Other times he shouted and cursed at everyone. He even invited people from outside to come in, despite no one being there, and urged your grandmother to wield a knife against imaginary foes. During that summer break, you secretly visited your paternal grandmother's house to see your uncle, as your parents were divorced and your mother didn't allow any contact with your father's side. The houses of your maternal and paternal grandmothers were only about 4 kilometers apart. After 12 years, you decided to visit, and your grandmother cried when she saw you. You noticed your grandfather was not in his right mind, half-conscious, and behaving abnormally. Your grandmother's house was isolated because neighbors were afraid, stemming from your grandfather's past misdeeds. Reflecting on it, you realized he was now paying for his actions. There was another reason for his condition, which your grandmother shared. After showing signs of madness, she took him to a spiritual healer. The healer said 2 spirits, a male and a female, were following him. They were once close friends who had vowed to live and die together, but they died before your grandfather. When he visited their funeral in Ca Mau, they attached themselves to him. Your grandmother was worried and asked the healer for a solution, but he said the vows were too strong to break. You found it strange that during your stay, your grandfather often stood at the edge of a nearby cemetery, waving and greeting unseen entities. He seemed to converse with these invisible friends until he returned inside. On the second night of your stay, something terrifying happened that has since deterred you from visiting your grandmother's village. Although you had never experienced nightmares or fear from sleeping in unfamiliar places, that night you were awakened around 2 a.m. by a woman's laughter. In a dreamlike state, You saw a middle-aged woman standing in an undefined space, not at the corner or doorway, with a fierce expression. Her face was clear, and you felt her presence intensely. Suddenly, you heard a loud scold directed at you, followed by her face appearing very close to yours. The experience happened so quickly that you didn't understand what was going on. After she scolded you, she laughed again, and you woke up in a sweat, despite the fan blowing directly at you. Though terrified, you tried to sleep again. Around 3 a.m., you heard the laughter once more, echoing in the house. This time, you saw the woman extending a long arm toward you. The fear was overwhelming, and you struggled to sit up, your hands flailing as if fighting an unseen entity. Panicked, you ran out of the room. In the room of your grandmother, you asked her to make the sign of the cross to help you feel less scared. When she did, that night you were finally at peace. The next morning, you asked your grandmother why your dream felt so real. She explained it was because the house was built on the land where your parents used to live, and there are many mysteries about it that you will share later. You don't have time to tell that story now, but you will share another story about your father. After that period, you were very scared, and because of your work in Saigon, you didn't visit your grandmother's house anymore. This is the story of your father when your parents were still together in SOC Trang. Your father had a profession of trapping rats and even snakes. He was very skilled at it. In the past, in the Mekong Delta, there were plenty of birds, rats, and field snakes. Your father was so skilled that he could catch dozens of kilograms each day. After catching them, he would sell them cheaply to the neighbors, who bought a lot but didn't like him much because they knew the history of your father's family. This is the prelude to explaining why your parents divorced and your family became scattered. Although your father was truly skilled, he had a flaw: drinking. He was also very abusive, often returning home drunk and beating your mother as if she weren't his wife. This didn't happen when they first got married. Later, your mother explained that the reason your father became a drunkard and abusive was that he wanted a son, not a daughter. Your grandmother had promised that whoever had a son first would receive the most inheritance. So, your father's greed led him to demand your mother have a son. When your mother was pregnant with you and it was discovered you were a girl, your father was very upset and beat your mother severely. Your grandmother had said that if there was no son, the inheritance would be minimal. This thought tormented your father, and after the news, he drank heavily. One night, when he returned drunk, he forced himself on your mother despite her being pregnant. She pleaded with him, fearing for her life and yours, but he ignored her pleas. Despite this, your mother gave birth to you safely. The midwife, your great-grandmother, advised your mother to take good care of you because you seemed to have a bright future. Your mother was happy but also sad because your father never wanted you. Reflecting on this, you realized the hardships your mother endured for a long time. This led to your parents' separation. After many events, your father moved to Tai Ninh to continue his trapping work. 2 years ago, you accidentally met your father again, and you both lived together, continuing the trapping work. You didn't hold grudges against your father because you don't harbor resentment for long. One day, while following your father to catch snakes in Tai Ninh, you went to a place known as the Water Dam. Suddenly, you ran into the house to call Ms. Tao, your father's partner, to check on him. When Ms. Tao came out, she saw your father writhing on the floor. You asked if he had a stroke, but MS. Tao explained that your father was being tormented by a snake spirit and advised you to stay away from him. Your father captured too many snakes, which led to his current predicament. According to your friend, Ms. Tao, who is also a fortune teller, she couldn't help your father because she said he was being tormented by snakes, not possessed by spirits. MS. Tao observed many snakes surrounding your father, advising you to lie down as they meant no harm to you. Witnessing this scene left you shocked and fearful, especially since you had accompanied your father earlier to catch these snakes, including the dangerous cobra. You feared the snakes would continue to torment you, but MS. Tao reassured you that they only intended to torment your father to make him quit snake catching. Eventually, your father recovered from the ordeal near dawn, but remembered nothing, not even the simple task of applying toothpaste to his toothbrush. Despite the experience, he wasn't frightened and continued the snake-catching business out of necessity. The next day, he took you to the dam to catch more snakes, but he forgot the way, even though he had traveled it for years. You had to ask locals for directions. Upon reaching the dam, your father experienced convulsions resembling a snake's movements, causing the vehicle to crash into the roadside. You fell onto the road, and your father ended up in the dam. You both sat in the bushes, and you applied oil from a bottle you carried for headaches. You suggested returning home and quitting snake catching, but your father, despite being in pain, insisted on continuing the next day. On the way back, you both had a vehicle accident at a bridge slope, despite no obstacles or other vehicles. The vehicle overturned, and you were scraped on the knee while your father was injured, but claimed his elbow wasn't broken despite the pain. You returned home to recover, staying for 2 months before resuming snake catching. Your father didn't believe in such supernatural matters due to his Christian upbringing and wasn't afraid. However, before returning to the dam, he learned that the area had been paved, causing the snakes to relocate. He decided to move to a location near the Siuchi tunnels instead. Traveling from Tainin to Siuchi required passing a wide intersection with obstructed views due to vegetation. You were supposed to accompany your father, but couldn't due to chronic headaches. Instead, he went with your stepmother. Despite having previously observed the intersection, they suffered a severe accident. Your stepmother sustained a serious eye injury, while your father bled profusely from his arms and legs. Hearing the news, you rushed to the scene, fainted at the sight of blood, and were taken to the clinic. Once recovered, you learned they hadn't stayed in the hospital for treatment, only bandaged their wounds, and returned home. Reflecting on the events, you remember the day before the accident involving your father and stepmother. Your stepfather had a traffic accident. Your father and mother went to catch a snake nest, which contained 4 snake eggs. Your father brought these snake eggs home that day. When you saw your father bring the snakes and the nest of eggs home, you were very scared. You cared for them a lot, so you tried to stop your father. You asked him to leave the snake eggs behind, but he didn't listen. You didn't dare to say more because you feared being scolded. That night, after selling the big snakes, your father bought white radishes to cook with lemongrass. Everyone knows that if you like eating snakes, snake stew with lemongrass and white radish is delicious. But he cooked it with those snake eggs too. Your father made you eat it, saying it was nutritious and not always available. However, you were too scared to eat it, feeling sorry for the snakes, as they had done nothing wrong to deserve being cooked and eaten. So that night, you didn't eat the snake stew. You watched your father and stepmother eat the snake eggs, including 2 eggs that looked like baby snakes. Your stepmother picked up a tiny snake with chopsticks and ate it greedily. You were horrified. After finishing the meal, they cleaned up and went to bed. The next day, while going out to the Siuchi tunnels to catch snakes, they had a terrible accident. You concluded that this was karma for your father, as people had warned him many times, but he didn't listen. Despite the accident, your father continued to catch snakes many times. And almost every time he had an accident, sometimes severe, sometimes minor. Seeing the frequent accidents, your father decided to quit the job. Although he quit in everyday life, he still often got hit by cars, and nobody knew why. Perhaps the karma still lingered. As Duy mentioned at the beginning, there's still a thrilling story about karma. But since the story has been quite long, Duy decided to save the karma story for the next episode, and will include a few more karma stories for everyone to hear. Now, our story will pause here. Before ending the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel to support Duy. Let's look forward to the next exciting episode. Duy says goodbye to everyone. Hello everyone. Welcome back to the YouTube channel of Ghost Stories by Uncle Ba Duy. I hope you all have an exciting time listening to ghost stories. Before diving into the tales, don't forget to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel to support Duy. Thank you all very much. Today we have a story about a haunting event that occurred at Destiny Hospital, which wouldn't have happened if you hadn't been involved in an accident. It all started one morning before heading to work. Ms. Lon, who lived near your room, needed a ride to work. You've always been kind-hearted, ready to help anyone in need, especially Ms. Lon, who lived right next to your apartment. So, that morning, as it was almost time to leave for work, Lan's vehicle broke down, and you offered her a ride. The two of you headed to the company together. On the way, nothing seemed unusual, but when you arrived at the company gate, you stopped on the roadside, requiring Ms. Lan to cross the street to enter the company. As the vehicle stopped, you were still seated while Ms. Lan stepped off. Suddenly, from behind, two young men, around 14 or 15 years old, sped towards her and collided at high speed, causing Ms. Lan to fall onto the street and fracture her arm. At that moment, you were stunned, unaware of what was happening because you were still sitting in the vehicle while Ms. Lan had just stepped off. Right before your eyes, the accident unfolded, with Ms. Lan thrown into the street. The road was clear while you were still in the car, which was quite fortunate for you because you and Aunt Lan were standing very close to each other. Aunt Lan was thrown into the middle of the road while you were unharmed, partly because you have a strong fear of blood. Fresh blood makes you faint on the spot. Once you gathered yourself, you called your father and stepmother to come to the scene to assist Aunt Lan. After everyone arrived, they took Aunt Lan to the Tay Ninh General Hospital for treatment. You remember that Aunt Lan had a metal brace put in her arm because she broke a bone and had to stay in hospital for quite a long time. Seeing this, you arranged your schedule to visit her in the hospital. Unfortunately, during your visits, you became entangled with a spiritual connection that still affects you to this day. When you texted Duy, you had goosebumps. That day, after arranging to visit Aunt Lan, the two of you chatted for about half an hour. You cried because you felt sorry for Aunt Lan's injury. You were driving that day, and you're someone who cries easily. Seeing her wound made you emotional and want to cry. After crying for a while, your eyes were wet, so you decided to go to the restroom at the end of the hallway to wash your face. After washing your face and stepping out of the restroom, you saw a nurse who appeared to be around 29 or 30 years old. She wasn't very young, like 20 or 21, but still youthful. She was pushing a patient's bed covered with a cloth. You didn't think about whether the person on the bed was alive or not. The nurse asked you to help push the bed into the elevator to take it to the ground floor. Without hesitation, you helped because you knew that helping others is also helping yourself. You stood in front of the bed while the nurse stood behind, and together you pushed the patient into the staff elevator. The elevator was quite spacious. As soon as you stepped inside, you felt a chill run down your spine, even though you were wearing 3 thick layers of clothing. During the elevator ride, you didn't pay much attention to anything, just stared into space, not even noticing the nurse until you reached the ground floor. When the elevator doors opened, you were shocked to realize you were alone with the bed, with no nurse or patient in sight. At that moment, all you could do was silently recite prayers because you felt your calcium levels drop due to fear. When you reached the ground floor, there were a few nurses there, and feeling flustered, you asked them where to leave the bed since you didn't know. Before they could answer, one of the nurses, about 24 or 25 years old with a kind face, asked you, "How old are you?" That Nurse Hang from the 3rd floor noticed you. When you asked who Nurse Hang was, she replied that Nurse Hang was the one who had been in the elevator with you. Hearing this, you were confused because although you had been scared in the elevator with a nurse, she was gone when you got out. The nurse continued, explaining that Nurse Hang worked on the 3rd floor and had passed away 7 days ago. Hearing this, you nearly fainted from shock. The nurse then told you that Nurse Hang had died at 29, just as you had estimated when you first saw her in the elevator. She also mentioned that before her death, Nurse Hang was part of the LGBT community, identifying as a lesbian and playing the role of the wife in her relationship. The nurse reassured you not to be afraid because Nurse Hang liked you and meant no harm. She explained that after her death, Nurse Hang had become very spiritual and had appeared to her in a dream, instructing her to wait by the elevator to speak with you so you wouldn't be scared. You have something that blocks spirits, preventing Sister Hang from touching you. Just like other spirits, no one can touch your body. That's why Sister Hang said she would meet you in the next life. Sister Hang is from another world, so she can't hold your hand anymore. These are the words of a 25-year-old nurse who told you this story right by the elevator on the ground floor. After chatting with this nurse, you learned that Sister Hang was very close to her before she passed away. Sister Hang loved literature and art, enjoyed reading, writing poetry, and painting. In the elevator, when you felt a chill, you immediately started chanting, which is why Sister Hang couldn't touch you. This is what you believe. After hearing the nurse's account of Sister Hang's spirit, you felt a bit sad. As Duy mentioned in a previous clip, you are a tomboy, and your current appearance is more like a boy than a girl. You attract people of the same gender, which is normal. However, after hearing the nurse's story, you felt restless, like someone in love. You don't understand why you develop feelings for a 29-year-old who had just passed away. You admit it sounds strange, but those in the community will understand your feelings through the nurse's story. Her words felt familiar, not distant. You aren't just a typical tomboy. You are more like a transgender male, almost indistinguishable from a boy. You thought everything would end there since Sister Hang's spirit couldn't touch you and had promised to meet you in the next life. But unexpectedly that night, you saw Sister Hang sitting beside your bed, holding your hand, speaking words of love, and repeating the promise of meeting in the next life right in your room. You were genuinely surprised and didn't tell Duy whether you were awake or dreaming. You asked Sister Hang why she died, and she shared the tragic reason. When alive, Sister Hang worked at the hospital and was assigned to care for a male patient undergoing drug rehabilitation. She remembered precisely that the room she cared for this patient was room 6 on the 3rd floor, where you met Sister Hang. The patient was a 21-year-old male with a severe drug addiction. His wealthy family hired a lawyer to prevent him from going to jail and sent him to the hospital for rehabilitation under Nurse Hang's care. Due to his severe addiction, he didn't eat or bathe for days, so he smelled terrible. On that day, everything seemed normal. The male patient was in a room with other patients. As Sister Hang walked by, she heard him having a severe episode, disturbing other patients. When Sister Hang entered, the male patient attacked her, choking her. Sister Hang screamed, leading the doctors to isolate the patient in an empty room for solitary rehabilitation. Despite moving him to another room, Nurse Hang still had to administer medication. After his episode subsided, Sister Hang went in to give him sedatives and antibiotics. While preparing the medication, the patient unexpectedly stabbed her with a syringe containing a large amount of synthetic drugs. According to Sister Hang, synthetic drugs act faster than regular drugs, affecting the nervous system within 10 minutes. The syringe was prepared for his severe addiction, requiring double the normal dose. The syringe wasn't pure drugs, but a medication for addicts containing synthetic drugs. Being a normal person, Nurse Hang couldn't withstand the double dose. Within 20 minutes of injection, she experienced drug overdose symptoms, foaming at the mouth, weak heart, and died on the spot. Since the patient was isolated, no one noticed Nurse Hang's condition until 2 hours later when the hospital staff found her. By then, it was too late. She had died 2 hours earlier. After the incident was exposed, the young man's family compensated Ms. Hang's family and sent him to rehab for treatment. When you heard Ms. Hang recount the cause of her death, you suddenly woke up, realizing it was just a dream. You found yourself crying without even noticing. Since the previous story, Duy had talked about your family situation. Your parents divorced early, leaving you lacking family affection, which made you feel lonely. You're easily moved by emotional situations, especially when they involve your feelings and a spiritual presence. After that dream, you couldn't bring yourself to date anyone. Later, you tried to connect with a woman, but every time you planned to meet or deepen a relationship, you suffered from severe headaches. You told Duy you suffered from frequent headaches, and if you didn't have your oil with you, the pain could be so intense it would make you faint. Every time you and the woman planned to meet, you experienced severe headaches. Although your job as a manager involved a lot of accounting, those headaches were mild in comparison. But whenever you planned to see your girlfriend, you felt dizzy and wanted to faint, causing you to cancel the dates. 10 minutes after canceling, your headache would vanish as if someone was influencing you. You couldn't understand why this happened. Everything was normal until you arranged to meet your girlfriend. Out of 10 dates, you felt nauseous and had headaches every time, leading you to apologize to the woman and stop pursuing the relationship for your own health. Reflecting on this, You thought perhaps a spiritual force was preventing you from dating anyone else, possibly Ms. Hang's spirit. You decided not to date anyone, fearing you might harm them. Despite this decision, you still craved personal affection, so you tried dating 3 more people. But none of the relationships worked out. Eventually, you met a girl online, and before your first date, you dreamt of Ms. Hang. In the dream, she sat beside you, looking sad, and told you she cared for you. She advised you to cancel the date because the girl had bad intentions and only wanted to take your money. Ms. Hang, being deceased, couldn't always be with you, and she had to reincarnate soon. Her words made you reconsider, and you canceled the date, choosing instead to hold a ceremony to mark Ms. Hang's 100th day. Though you weren't related, you spent the day in your room, listening to music, feeling empty yet relieved that Ms. Hang was ready to reincarnate. Afterward, you visited a doctor who assured you your headaches were normal, so you didn't pursue treatment. These experiences convinced you of being under a spiritual influence, but you hesitated to consult a spiritual advisor, fearing unwanted revelations. You remain uncertain about seeking a spiritual solution, and you hope anyone who hears your story can offer advice. He went out to buy things for his parents, but unfortunately he ran over a dog, causing his bike to flip over, and he fell. After you checked on him and talked for a while, he felt better and managed to lift his bike. Initially, you thought you'd both go your separate ways, but he asked if he could accompany you home as a way of thanking you. He was concerned about your safety traveling alone, so he followed you home. However, when you reached your gate and turned around, he had disappeared without a trace. Everything seemed normal, and you didn't keep in touch with him often. A few days later, after your extra classes, you saw him sitting outside waiting. You asked him why he was there, and he said he was waiting for you to go home together. You agreed, and both of you went to your house. This time, he smiled and said goodbye before leaving, unlike the first time when he vanished. That night, you dreamed of wearing a beautiful wedding dress, holding hands with a groom who was none other than him. You woke up with your heart racing, feeling like you missed him. You weren't sure if you contacted him during the day, but a few days later, while cycling home, a group of young men started harassing you. You were scared and thought how nice it would be if he appeared. Miraculously, he showed up, and the men left you alone. You were relieved, but puzzled by his timely appearances. You realized you only saw him at night, never during the day. One day, after an exhausting day, you were hit by a truck. As you fell under it, you felt someone pulling you to safety. Terrified, you went home, and that night, you dreamed of him again. He revealed he had died and had been watching over you since your first encounter. He explained how he protected you from the harassers and saved you from the accident. He expressed his love for you, which brought you to tears. He scolded you for being reckless with your bike, saying he wouldn't have been able to save you otherwise. Upon waking, you felt a deep affection for him, but were also scared. The next day, you prayed at the spot where you first met, asking him to show himself during the day instead of just in dreams. As you continued on your way, you didn't see him, but the experience left a lasting impression on you. That night, after studying for an exam, you studied until around 1 a.m. Exhausted, you lay down and slept until about 3 a.m. when you suddenly woke up. You clearly saw a dark figure slowly moving from the door of your room toward your bed. You realized it was the shape of a young man who lay down next to you and began to embrace you. When you turned to look at him, you saw his eyes were filled with tears, as if he wanted to cry, but he said nothing. You only felt that much before you fainted and slept until morning. The next day, you recounted the story to your mother, including how you first met this young man. After hearing everything, your mother realized who he was and decided to find his family because they lived nearby. Your mother took you to meet his parents. During the conversation, his parents decided to seek help from a spiritual medium because they had been seeing him frequently. They believed he was still lingering at the accident site and unable to move on. When you visited his house and saw his portrait, you felt incredibly sad, as if you had lost a loved one. You were so distraught that you couldn't focus on your studies. You constantly remembered the first time you met him on your way home from extra classes and the times he spoke to you. About a month after his family performed a spiritual ceremony, you saw him in a dream. He looked sad and told you that he wouldn't be able to help you anymore and wouldn't be by your side. He said he had to leave, but believed that a kind girl like you would find someone good. He expressed regret that your paths crossed at the wrong time, as he was from the spirit world and you from the living world, so you couldn't be together. After that, you woke up feeling a mix of sadness and heartache. Despite the pain, you understood that he was from the spirit world and you were from the living world, so you had to move on. Eventually, you managed to forget him. Every year, on the anniversary of his death, you visit his grave to light incense. Telling this story reminded you of other spiritual experiences from your childhood. As a child, you loved playing hide and seek, and many stories about this game have been told. In your neighborhood, your parents had a field near a large banyan tree. This tree was so big that it would take about 5 or 6 people to encircle it. Its wide canopy made it a popular play spot for the neighborhood kids. One evening, after playing various games, your group decided to play hide and seek. You were the seeker and counted at the tree while others hid. After finding everyone but Han, you discovered she had hidden in a bamboo grove. She was found last, so she became the seeker in the next round. During the next round, Han stood at the tree counting, but after waiting a long time, no one saw her searching. Everyone came out, but Han was nowhere to be found. Alarmed, you all reported to Han's family that she was missing. Despite searching all night and calling out for her, there was no response. By dawn, you brought out black dogs, and they found Han still in the bamboo grove where she had hidden the previous night. Her mouth was full of clay, a common sign of being hidden by spirits. It was a terrifying experience, and since then, no child dared to play hide and seek there. 2 years later, after everyone had forgotten about Han's ordeal, your group gathered again and decided to play a game called Man, a favorite despite its spiritual risks. Once something happens, you tell the kids in the neighborhood, "Hey, do you want to play the Ghostkin game? I heard this game is quite mystical. When you play, the kin will move. Let's try it out. I've only heard about it. Not sure if it's real." You also want to explore whether the can's movement is true or not. So the whole group gathered to find a milk can. Everyone took the milk can, filled it with dirt, stuck incense sticks in it, and put some candies inside. Then they started reciting a summoning chant 5 times. At that time, there was a belief that when playing the Ghostkin game, you had to use sticky candies like coconut or malt candies. This way, if a ghost enters the can, it will get stuck eating the candies and won't chase after us. But after reciting the chant 5 times, nothing happened. Me, one of the group members, scolded, "Are you crazy? This is nonsense. I don't see anything." Yet it wasn't like that. After waiting a while, the can started to shake lightly and move as if someone was pulling it with a string. It dragged across the ground, and everyone imagined it being pulled through space. At that moment, the whole group panicked and ran home, leaving the kin behind. So nobody knew where the kin ended up. The next morning at school, you noticed me and Bin's ankles were swollen. The day before, they were the last to run in the group, even though they can never touch their ankles. But when they slept, their ankles swelled up. However, the injury wasn't serious, and after about 2 weeks, the swelling went down and it no longer hurt. Thinking back on the game, none of the kids in the neighborhood were scared of it. Instead, they were more curious. Everyone thought that no matter how much you summoned, the kin couldn't move on its own. But you witnessed it being pulled across the ground. In your neighborhood, whenever kids play games, something always happens, like when me was younger. That day, you went to your grandma's place, so you didn't know the neighborhood had a complete power outage. Me invited the kids to play a game called Dragon Snake Climbing the Cloud, where they formed a line like a train and held onto each other. Dewey wasn't clear about what happened because of the blackout, as the kids gathered to play without paying attention to how many joined. During the game, me noticed you participating, heard your voice, and saw you laughing and joking around. When the power came back and the lights turned on, me passed by your house and heard your mom say you were at your grandma's place and not there. Me was shocked, wondering who the child was, as she clearly saw you playing with the neighborhood kids. When me asked around, The elderly in the neighborhood mentioned that a person once hanged themselves from the tree there, so kids shouldn't play or mess around at night, as spirits might join or harm them. And that's the end of our story today. Before we finish, don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel to support Duy. Thank you all very much. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment below to let others know. Now, let's look forward to more exciting stories in future episodes. Goodbye, everyone.